Princess Zaratil stood at the observation deck of the diplomatic station, her forearms wrapped around herself as she watched another transport ship depart. The Vorthan delegation had barely lasted 3 hours before declaring the alliance impossible and leaving in disgust. She was the 7th suitor to reject her this cycle, and each departure felt like another nail in the coffin of her people's future. The Kethrani Empire was dying. Their homeworld's resources were nearly depleted. Their military forces stretched thin across a dozen border conflicts, and their once mighty fleet was becoming obsolete against newer technologies. Princess Zaratil, as the heir to the throne, carried the weight of finding a solution. The Imperial Council had decided that a strategic marriage alliance was their best hope for survival. But who would want to ally with a dying empire? Zaratil's reflection stared back at her from the reinforced glass. Her blue-scaled skin shimmered with patterns that indicated her royal bloodline, and her large, amber eyes held intelligence that had impressed tutors from across the galaxy. Yet none of it seemed to matter to potential suitors. They saw only a desperate princess from a failing civilization. The Altarian prince had called her people primitive warmongers. The Centauri ambassador had described their technology as quaint relics. The Andromedans hadn't even bothered with insults. They simply stated that the Kethrani had nothing to offer and left immediately. Behind her, the station's automated systems announced another incoming vessel. Zaratil didn't bother turning around. She had grown tired of hope, tired of preparing for meetings that would inevitably end in rejection. Her personal guard, Captain Veltar, approached with cautious steps. "Your Highness, the new delegation has arrived. They're unusual." Zaratil finally turned, noticing the uncertainty in her captain's voice. Veltar had served in the Imperial Navy for 3 decades and had faced countless alien species in battle and diplomacy. Very little surprised him anymore. Unusual how? They're called humans, from a world called Earth. They're small. Only 2 arms, no natural armor, no enhanced strength or telepathic abilities. Their ship is primitive by galactic standards, but Veltar paused, searching for the right words. There's something about them. They didn't flinch when they saw our warships. They didn't ask about our military strength or our resources. They just asked to meet with you. Zaratil felt a flicker of curiosity despite herself. In all her diplomatic training, she had learned that first questions revealed a species' priorities. Most delegations immediately inquired about military assets, territorial holdings, or economic advantages. What kind of species would ignore all of that? She made her way to the diplomatic chamber, her ceremonial robes flowing behind her. The room was designed to accommodate various alien physiologies, with adjustable lighting, atmosphere controls, and seating arrangements. As she entered, she saw them. 3 beings that looked remarkably fragile compared to every other species she had encountered. The lead human was tall for his species, with dark skin and kind eyes that met hers directly. Most aliens either averted their gaze in fear or stared with predatory interest. These humans simply looked at her as if she were normal. "Your Highness," the human said, offering a slight bow that somehow managed to convey respect without subservience. "I am Ambassador Marcus Chun of the United Earth Government. This is Dr. Sarah Martinez, our xenobiologist, and Commander James Wright, our military advisor." Zaratil took her place on the raised platform, her 4 arms arranging her robes with practiced grace. "Welcome to Kethrani Space, Ambassador Chun. I confess, your people are unknown to us. Earth is not in our star charts. We're a relatively young, spacefaring civilization," Dr. Martinez explained. "We only achieved faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. We've been exploring and making contact with other species, learning about the galaxy's political landscape." Commander Wright stepped forward. "We've heard about the Kethrani Empire's current challenges. We understand you're seeking alliance partners." Here it comes, Zaratil thought. They would list the Empire's weaknesses, explain why an alliance would be disadvantageous for them, and politely decline before requesting safe passage through Kethrani space. Instead, Ambassador Chin surprised her. We'd like to know more about your people's history, your culture, and your hopes for the future. Not your military capabilities or resource inventories. We can research those through public records. We want to understand who the Kethrani really are. For the first time in months, Princess Zaratil felt something she had almost forgotten. Genuine interest from another species in her people as more than potential assets or threats. The conversation that followed was unlike any diplomatic meeting Zaratil had ever experienced. Instead of the typical negotiations about trade routes and military support, the humans asked about Kethrani art, philosophy, and social structures. Dr. Martinez was particularly fascinated by their complex family hierarchies and how four-armed physiology had influenced their architecture and technology. Your people developed a unique approach to mathematics, Dr. Martinez observed, studying the holographic displays of Kethrani cities. Base 8 numerical systems, quaternary logic processors. It's elegant in its efficiency. Ambassador Chen nodded thoughtfully. We've noticed that most galactic civilizations seem to dismiss innovation that doesn't match their own developmental paths. They see different as inferior rather than recognizing alternative approaches to common problems. Zaratil felt a warmth spreading through her chest. When was the last time someone had complimented Kethrani achievements without immediately listing their current weaknesses? Our mathematicians developed those systems out of necessity. Our homeworld has unusual gravitational fields that made standard galactic calculations problematic for orbital mechanics. Adaptation and innovation, Commander Wright said approvingly. Those are qualities we value highly in humanity. We've had to be creative to survive in a galaxy where we're physically outmatched by nearly everyone else. The conversation continued for hours. The humans asked about Kethrani music, which incorporated frequencies beyond most species' hearing range. They inquired about their agricultural techniques, developed for harsh environmental conditions. They even wanted to know about Kethrani games and recreational activities. As the day progressed, Zaratil found herself relaxing in ways she hadn't since the diplomatic mission began. She spoke about her people's love of crystal gardens, where they grew living gems that sang in harmony with emotional states. She described their coming-of-age ceremonies, where young Kethrani would undertake journeys to find their life's purpose. She even shared stories of her own childhood, learning statecraft by playing elaborate strategy games with her siblings. It sounds like your people value individual growth and community harmony equally, Ambassador Chen observed. That's a difficult balance to achieve. Most civilizations we've encountered lean heavily toward one or the other. The balance is indeed delicate, Zaratil admitted. Our current crisis has tested it severely. Some believe we should become more aggressive, abandoning our cultural values to survive through conquest. Others think we should isolate ourselves completely, preserving our way of life even as our civilization declines. Dr. Martinez leaned forward with genuine interest. What do you believe? The question caught Zaratil off guard. No one had asked for her personal opinion in months. Every conversation had been about her role as a political tool, a marriageable asset to secure alliances. These humans seemed to see her as an individual with her own thoughts and feelings. I believe we need to find a third path, she said slowly. One that preserves who we are while giving us the strength to face tomorrow's challenges. But I'm beginning to think such a path might not exist. Commander Wright exchanged glances with his colleagues. Ambassador, may I speak freely? Zaratil nodded, curious about what the military advisor might say. In our brief time exploring the galaxy, we've noticed something disturbing. Most established civilizations seem to have given up on growth and innovation. They've become static, focused on maintaining existing power structures rather than adapting to new challenges. Your people's current crisis might actually be an opportunity. An opportunity for what? To break free from the patterns that have trapped other species. To find new ways of doing things instead of just copying what others have done before. Ambassador Chen smiled. Commander Wright has a point. We've seen species with vast military might that can't solve basic resource allocation problems. We've met civilizations with incredible technology that can adapt when circumstances change. Power without flexibility is just another form of weakness. Zaratil felt something stirring within her, a feeling she had almost forgotten. Hope. But she forced herself to be realistic. That's a beautiful philosophy, Ambassador, but it doesn't address our immediate needs. We require allies with resources and military capabilities. What if I told you that Earth, despite being new to interstellar politics, has something most established powers don't? What could a young civilization possibly offer that the great empires cannot? Dr. Martinez answered with a smile. Perspective. We're not bound by the same assumptions that limit other species. We don't see the galaxy's problems as unsolvable simply because they haven't been solved yet. And, most importantly, we're willing to try new approaches instead of just repeating old failures. Ambassador Chun stood and moved to the viewing port, gazing out at the stars. Princess Zaratil, what if instead of seeking a traditional marriage alliance with an established power, you considered partnering with a species that shares your values and your willingness to innovate? The implications of his words began to sink in. Zaratil stared at the human delegation with new eyes, seeing them not as another group of potential suitors evaluating her worth, but as possible partners who might genuinely understand her people's situation. The next several days transformed Zaratil's understanding of diplomacy entirely. Rather than the formal, structured negotiations she was accustomed to, the humans engaged in what they called collaborative problem-solving sessions. They didn't present ultimatums or make demands. Instead, they worked together to identify challenges and brainstorm solutions. Dr. Martinez had brought extensive research on resource management techniques that Earth had developed during their own periods of scarcity. We went through something similar about a century ago, she explained, displaying holographic models of Earth's recovery programs. Climate change and resource depletion nearly destroyed our civilization. We learned that survival required cooperation between former enemies and completely new approaches to old problems. Commander Wright shared tactical innovations that were born from humanity's physical limitations. We couldn't match other species in raw strength or natural weapons, so we developed strategies based on adaptability and unpredictability. We found that sometimes the most effective approach is the one your opponent would never expect. But it was Ambassador Chun who provided the most surprising revelation during a private dinner on the third evening. The setting was informal, a small chamber with adjustable gravity and atmosphere to accommodate both species comfortably. Zaratil had never shared a meal with alien diplomats before. Such intimacy was considered inappropriate in most galactic cultures. I should tell you something about Earth's situation, Chun said, cutting into what appeared to be a synthesized version of familiar Kethrani cuisine. We're not as established as we've been presenting ourselves. Zaratil paused, a bite of food halfway to her mouth. What do you mean? Earth is also facing significant challenges. We're a young civilization in a galaxy full of ancient powers. Most species see us as primitives or potential threats to be eliminated before we become dangerous. We've been rejected by the major galactic councils, denied trade partnerships, and warned away from several sectors entirely. The admission hung in the air between them. Zaratil set down her utensil, studying the human's expression. Then, why are you here? What could you possibly offer us if your own position is so precarious? Chun smiled, and there's something both sad and determined in his expression. Because sometimes two struggling civilizations can help each other in ways that powerful ones never could. We understand what it's like to be dismissed and underestimated. We know what desperation feels like. And we've learned that survival often requires taking risks that comfortable civilizations would never consider. Dr. Martinez leaned forward. Our species has a saying, necessity is the mother of invention. When you have no choice but to innovate, you often discover possibilities that others miss. Are you proposing what I think you're proposing? Zaratil asked carefully. We're suggesting a genuine partnership, Commander Wright said. Not a marriage alliance based on political convenience, but a collaboration between species that share similar values and complementary strengths. Zaratil's mind raced through the implications. A partnership with humans would be seen as a sign of desperation by the established powers. It would likely eliminate any remaining possibilities for traditional alliances with major civilizations. But it might also offer something more valuable, a chance to build something new rather than just managing decline. Tell me more about these complementary strengths, she said. Over the following hours, they outlined a vision that was both ambitious and practical. The Kethrani had advanced energy manipulation technology and sophisticated material science. Humans had developed remarkable biotechnology and adaptive manufacturing processes. Kethrani ships were fast and efficient but lightly armed. Human vessels were tough and versatile but slower than most galactic standards. Our combined fleet would have capabilities that neither of us possesses alone, Commander Wright explained. Kethrani speed and energy weapons paired with human armor and tactical flexibility. It would be unlike anything the major powers have faced before. Dr. Martinez added, more importantly, our research teams working together could solve problems that have stumped both our civilizations individually. Your energy manipulation techniques, combined with our biological adaptation research, could revolutionize everything from medicine to terraforming. But it was the cultural compatibility that truly excited Zaratil. Both species valued individual achievement within strong community structures. Both had histories of overcoming adversity through innovation rather than conquest. Both possessed what Ambassador Chun called stubborn optimism, the refusal to accept that current problems were unsolvable. There will be challenges, Zaratil admitted. My people have their pride. Accepting partnership with a species that most of the galaxy considers primitive would be difficult for some to accept. We face similar attitudes from our own populations, Chun acknowledged. Many humans believe we should focus on building our strength before committing to external partnerships. But we've learned that isolation in a hostile galaxy is just slow suicide. Commander Wright nodded. Sometimes you have to take a leap of faith. Sometimes the safe choice is actually the most dangerous one. Zaratil stood and walked to the viewing port, looking out at the stars that had once seemed to hold promise for her people's future. Now she saw them differently, not as destinations to be conquered or powers to be appeased, but as a vast frontier full of possibilities that no one had yet explored. If we did this, she said slowly, it couldn't be a traditional arrangement. No ceremonial marriages or formal treaties that bind us to predetermined roles. It would have to be something entirely new. What did you have in mind? Dr. Martinez asked. Zaratil turned back to face the human delegation, feeling more alive than she had in months. A true partnership of equals. Shared risks, shared discoveries, shared futures. We build something together that neither of our species could achieve alone. The humans exchanged glances, and she could see the same excitement in their eyes that she felt building in her chest. The announcement of the human-Kethrani partnership sent shockwaves through the galactic community. Within hours of the joint declaration, Zaratil's personal communication system was flooded with messages from the same civilizations that had rejected her weeks earlier. The Vorthan delegation, who had insulted her people as barbaric relics, suddenly requested an immediate audience to reconsider previous discussions. The Centauri ambassador, who had dismissed Kethrani technology as obsolete, now claimed there had been misunderstandings that needed clarification. Even the Andromedans, who had barely acknowledged her existence, sent formal inquiries about expanded diplomatic relations. Zaratil deleted them all without reading past the subject lines. Instead, she stood in the newly established Joint Command Center, watching as human and Kethrani engineers worked side by side to design their first collaborative project. The energy was infectious. Scientists from both species were discovering that their different approaches to similar problems created innovative solutions neither group could have reached alone. Dr. Martinez was practically vibrating with excitement as she showed Zaratiel the preliminary results. Look at this. Your people's bioresonance technology combined with our genetic adaptation techniques has created something entirely new. We can now modify organisms to thrive in environments that were previously uninhabitable. The applications are staggering, added Kethrani Chief Scientist Mordain, her forearms dancing across multiple control interfaces simultaneously. Terraforming projects that would take centuries could be completed in decades. Food production could be revolutionized. Medical treatments that were impossible before are now within reach. But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Commander Wright was working with Captain Veltar on fleet integration when they discovered something that changed everything. Princess, Veltar called out, his usual stoic demeanor cracking with excitement. You need to see this. The tactical display showed a three-dimensional representation of a combined human-Kethrani fleet formation. But this wasn't just ships flying together. It was something fundamentally different. Human ships can serve as mobile command platforms for Kethrani fighters, Commander Wright explained. Your vessels are too small for long-range operations, but incredibly agile. Our ships are tough enough to withstand heavy combat, but lack maneuverability. Together, they create a fleet doctrine that no existing military has prepared for. Captain Veltar nodded enthusiastically. The humans call it distributed warfare. Instead of massive ships engaging in direct combat, we create networks of smaller, highly mobile units that can coordinate across vast distances. The enemy can't target what they can't predict. Zaratiel studied the tactical projections with growing amazement. The simulated battles showed combined fleets defeating forces 3 times their size through superior coordination and unpredictable tactics. But more importantly, it demonstrated something she had been hoping to find, a military strategy that didn't require the brutal conquest and occupation that traditional galactic powers relied upon. This changes everything, she breathed. Ambassador Chen approached, carrying a datapad with reports from Earth. It gets better. Our preliminary economic models show that the partnership could be self-sustaining within 5 years. Instead of depending on resource extraction and territorial expansion like most galactic empires, we can build wealth through innovation and voluntary trade relationships. Several minor civilizations have already expressed interest in joining, Dr. Martinez added. Species that have been marginalized by the major powers are seeing this as an alternative to either subjugation or isolation. But the most significant development came that evening, when Zaratiel received a priority message from her homeworld. Emperor Kethran himself, her father, appeared in holographic form with an expression she had never seen before, hope mixed with paternal pride. "My daughter," the emperor said, his voice carrying across the light years with crystalline clarity. "The Imperial Council has reviewed your partnership proposal with the humans. I must admit, there was significant resistance initially. Many counselors saw association with such a young species as beneath our dignity." Zaratiel tensed, preparing for disappointment despite all the promising developments. However, the Emperor continued, "The preliminary reports from your joint research projects have been illuminating. Our scientists are calling some of these breakthroughs revolutionary. Our military advisors are impressed by the tactical innovations. Most importantly, our economists predict that this partnership could solve our resource crisis within a generation." The hologram flickered slightly as the Emperor leaned forward. "But beyond all practical considerations, I see something in you that I haven't seen in years, my daughter. You look alive again. You look like the brilliant, determined princess I raised, not the political commodity that circumstances forced you to become." Tears began to form in Zaratiel's large amber eyes. "Father, the Imperial Council has unanimously approved the Human-Kethrani Alliance," the Emperor declared formally. "You have full authority to negotiate terms and establish joint operations. More than that, you have my personal blessing to build something new, something better than what we've had before." After the transmission ended, Zaratil found herself surrounded by both human and Kethrani colleagues who had become more than professional associates. They had become friends. The formal barriers that usually separated species in diplomatic relations had dissolved into genuine mutual respect and shared excitement about the future. Ambassador Chen raised a glass of synthesized Kethrani wine. To partnerships that nobody expected but everybody benefits from. Dr. Martinez grinned. To proving that sometimes the best solutions come from the most unlikely places. Commander Wright nodded approvingly. To showing the galaxy that cooperation is stronger than conquest. Captain Veltar, traditional and formal as always, nevertheless allowed himself a small smile. To Her Highness Princess Zaratil, who had the wisdom to see potential where others saw only problems. As they toasted their success, Zaratil realized that she had found something more valuable than any marriage alliance could have provided. She had found a future worth building 2 years later. Princess Zaratil stood on the bridge of the HSK Harmony, the first ship designed and built jointly by human and Kethrani engineers. The vessel was a marvel of integrated technology. Sleek Kethrani energy systems merged seamlessly with robust human defensive capabilities, creating something entirely unprecedented in galactic naval architecture. But the ship was just a symbol of much larger changes sweeping through their corner of the galaxy. Incoming transmission from the Altarian Empire, announced Lieutenant Sarah Kim, the human communications officer. They're requesting emergency diplomatic assistance. Zaratil exchanged amused glances with Captain Elena Vasquez, the human commander who had become her closest collaborator and friend over the past 2 years. The same Altarian Empire whose prince had called her people primitive warmongers now came seeking help. Put them through, Zaratil commanded. The view screen displayed Prince Altair himself, looking considerably less arrogant than during their last encounter. His crystalline features, normally radiating superiority, now showed clear signs of desperation. Princess Zaratil, he began, his voice carefully controlled. I come before you on behalf of the Altarian people. Our colony worlds are facing a resource crisis that threatens millions of lives. We have heard of your innovations in sustainable development and terraforming. Captain Vasquez leaned back in her chair, clearly enjoying the irony. Funny how primitive solutions suddenly become interesting when you need them. The prince's crystalline skin flickered with embarrassment. Our previous assessment may have been hasty. We would be grateful for any assistance the Alliance could provide. Zaratil considered the request carefully. The Human Kethrani Alliance had grown far beyond what anyone had initially envisioned. 17 species had joined their cooperative framework, drawn by the promise of mutual benefit rather than domination or exploitation. Their combined territories now controlled several key trade routes and resource-rich systems. More importantly, they had proven that there was an alternative to the galaxy's traditional power structures. We'll send a humanitarian mission, Zaratil decided. Dr. Martinez's terraforming techniques should be able to stabilize your colony environments within 6 months. What are your terms? Prince Altair asked suspiciously, clearly expecting demands for territory or tribute. No terms, Captain Vasquez replied simply. Humanitarian aid doesn't come with strings attached. Though if your people are interested in learning these techniques for future applications, we'd be happy to arrange educational exchanges. The confusion on Prince Altair's face was almost comical. He had clearly prepared for negotiations involving military bases, exclusive trade agreements, or political concessions. The concept of assistance without exploitation seemed foreign to him. After ending the transmission, Zaratil walked to the observation deck, where Ambassador Chun was reviewing reports from across Alliance space. The view outside showed a remarkable sight. Ships from dozens of different species working together on a massive construction project. The new research station is ahead of schedule, Chun reported with satisfaction. The Valerian architects, human engineers, and Kethrani energy specialists are working together like they've been partners for centuries. Any word for the Galactic Council? Zaratil asked. Chen's expression became more serious. They're getting nervous. Our success is undermining their narrative that galactic order requires strong central authority and hierarchical power structures. Several council members have been making subtle threats about containing the alliance before it destabilizes established relationships. Zaratiel wasn't surprised. The major galactic powers had initially dismissed the Human-Kithrani alliance as a desperate alliance between failing civilizations. When that alliance began attracting other species and achieving remarkable successes, the dismissal turned to concern. Now, with nearly 20 species choosing cooperation over conquest, concern was becoming fear. "Let them be nervous," Captain Vasquez said, joining their conversation. "We've proven that their way isn't the only way. Species don't have to choose between domination and submission anymore. Through the viewports, they could see the fruits of their alternative approach. The research station being constructed would be freely accessible to any species willing to share their discoveries. Trade flowed openly between member worlds without the tribute systems that characterized traditional empires. Conflicts were resolved through mediation rather than warfare." Dr. Martinez approached with her latest report, her excitement barely contained. "The agricultural productivity increases are beyond our most optimistic projections. The bioadaptive farming techniques are transforming worlds that were barely habitable into garden paradises. We're actually producing surplus food that we can distribute to struggling civilizations. Like the Altarians," Zaratiel observed. "Exactly. And here's the beautiful part. When we help others solve their problems, they often want to learn how to help solve other problems. It's creating an expanding network of cooperation that's becoming self-sustaining." Ambassador Chen nodded approvingly. "It turns out that generosity is actually good strategy." "Who would have thought?" Captain Vasquez laughed. "Every human philosopher for the past 3,000 years, but apparently it took meeting aliens to prove it on a galactic scale." As evening approached, Zaratiel made her way to her private quarters, where she kept a special communication array connected directly to her homeworld. Emperor Kethran appeared in holographic form, looking healthier and more vigorous than he had in years. "My daughter, I have news that will interest you. The Andromedans have formally requested membership in the Alliance." Zaratiel's eyes widened. The Andromedans were one of the oldest and most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. Their request for membership represented a fundamental shift in galactic politics. "They're facing internal rebellions on several worlds," the Emperor continued. "Their traditional methods of suppression aren't working anymore. Their subject species have heard about our cooperative model and are demanding similar treatment. The Andromedans have concluded that adaptation is preferable to collapse. And you've accepted them? Conditionally. They must demonstrate genuine commitment to our principles of mutual benefit and voluntary association. No more forced tribute, no more military occupation of unwilling worlds. If they can prove they've changed, they're welcome." After the transmission ended, Zaratiel reflected on the incredible journey that had brought her to this point. 2 years ago, she had been a desperate princess offering herself in marriage to save her dying empire. Now, she was a leader in a revolutionary movement that was reshaping galactic civilization. The humans had given her something more valuable than military aid or economic support. They had given her hope that things could be different, that the galaxy's problems weren't unsolvable, and that cooperation really could triumph over conquest. Looking out at the stars, she no longer saw them as distant destinations or hostile territories. She saw them as destinations for an expanding community of species who had chosen to build something better together. The rejection that had once seemed like her greatest failure had become her greatest triumph. Sometimes being refused by the wrong people led you to exactly the right place. Princess Zaratiel stood at the observation deck of the diplomatic station, her 4 arms wrapped around herself as she watched another transport ship depart. The Vorthan delegation had barely lasted 3 hours before declaring the alliance impossible and leaving in disgust. She was the 7th suitor to reject her this cycle, and Each departure felt like another nail in the coffin of her people's future. The Kethrani Empire was dying. Their homeworld's resources were nearly depleted, their military forces stretched thin across a dozen border conflicts, and their once mighty fleet was becoming obsolete against newer technologies. Princess Zaratil, as the heir to the throne, carried the weight of finding a solution. The Imperial Council had decided that a strategic marriage alliance was their best hope for survival. But who would want to ally with a dying empire? Zaratil's reflection stared back at her from the reinforced glass. Her blue-scaled skin shimmered with patterns that indicated her royal bloodline, and her large, amber eyes held intelligence that had impressed tutors from across the galaxy. Yet none of it seemed to matter to potential suitors. They saw only a desperate princess from a failing civilization. The Altarian prince had called her people primitive warmongers. The Centauri ambassador had described their technology as quaint relics. The Andromedans hadn't even bothered with insults. They simply stated that the Kethrani had nothing to offer and left immediately. Behind her, the station's automated systems announced another incoming vessel. Zaratil didn't bother turning around. She had grown tired of hope, tired of preparing for meetings that would inevitably end in rejection. Her personal guard, Captain Veltar, approached with cautious steps. "Your Highness, the new delegation has arrived." "They're unusual." Zaratil finally turned, noticing the uncertainty in her captain's voice. Veltar had served in the Imperial Navy for 3 decades and had faced countless alien species in battle and diplomacy. Very little surprised him anymore. Unusual how? They're called humans, from a world called Earth. They're small, only 2 arms, no natural armor, no enhanced strength or telepathic abilities. Their ship is primitive by galactic standards, but Veltar paused, searching for the right words. There's something about them. They didn't flinch when they saw our warships. They didn't ask about our military strength or our resources. They just asked to meet with you. Zaratil felt a flicker of curiosity despite herself. In all her diplomatic training, she had learned that first questions revealed a species' priorities. Most delegations immediately inquired about military assets, territorial holdings, or economic advantages. What kind of species would ignore all of that? She made her way to the diplomatic chamber, her ceremonial robes flowing behind her. The room was designed to accommodate various alien physiologies, with adjustable lighting, atmosphere controls, and seating arrangements. As she entered, she saw them. 3 beings that looked remarkably fragile compared to every other species she had encountered. The lead human was tall for his species, with dark skin and kind eyes that met hers directly. Most aliens either averted their gaze in fear or stared with predatory interest. These humans simply looked at her as if she were normal. "Your Highness," the human said, offering a slight bow that somehow managed to convey respect without subservience. "I am Ambassador Marcus Chun of the United Earth Government. This is Dr. Sarah Martinez, our xenobiologist, and Commander James Wright, our military advisor." Zaratil took her place on the raised platform, her 4 arms arranging her robes with practiced grace. "Welcome to Kethrani Space, Ambassador Chun. I confess, your people are unknown to us. Earth is not in our star charts. We're a relatively young, spacefaring civilization," Dr. Martinez explained. "We only achieved faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. We've been exploring and making contact with other species, learning about the galaxy's political landscape." Commander Wright stepped forward. "We've heard about the Kethrani Empire's current challenges. We understand you're seeking alliance partners." Here it comes, Zaratil thought. They would list the Empire's weaknesses, explain why an alliance would be disadvantageous for them, and politely decline before requesting safe passage through Kethrani space. Instead, Ambassador Chin surprised her. "We'd like to know more about your people's history, your culture, and your hopes for the future. Not your military capabilities or resource inventories. We can research those through public records. We want to understand who the Kethrani really are." For the first time in months, Princess Zaratil felt something she had almost forgotten: genuine interest from another species and her people as more than potential assets or threats.